Welcome back, everybody, to the KC Sports Report. I'm your host, Michael Darcy, and today I have the great pleasure to be joined by my good friends, Caden Sproul and Kyle Collier, both fellow producers at Sports Radio 810 WHB. And in this video, we're going to tackle the topic of the Chiefs potentially trading for wide receiver Tyreek Hill. So, fellas, one of the biggest storylines out of Week 1 is the Chiefs' wide receiver injuries and struggles, and Tyreek Hill being frustrated in Miami. I feel like I've said that sentence a lot over the past couple of seasons, but you saw earlier this past offseason, Tyreek Hill went ballistic after the Dolphins season ended, kind of trashed the team and the quarterback, and they actually took away his captain before the season started, and Tua and him are trying to build their trust back, but it kind of boiled over in Week 1 where they got just destroyed by the Indianapolis Colts. He's probably going to get traded. The question is that place going to be Kansas City? So I guess I want to talk about that in this video. So Caden, why don't we start with you? Do you think that Tyreek Hill could potentially be traded back to Kansas City?
I personally don't believe it will happen, but I obviously would love to see it happen. You know, if there was a situation where the Dolphins could eat a large amount of that cap, you know, kind of similar to what the Raiders did with Devontae Adams last year and trading him to the Jets. If they could take on a large amount of that cap and then, figure out a way to make it work contractually, then yeah, I would love to see that happen. Obviously, the last couple of years we have just been decimated at wide receiver with injuries. I mean, we talked about it a little bit before, but over the past, I'd say 5 to 10 years, I'd say the Chiefs have been really good, health-wise. We've had really good luck with health. But over the last few years, it just has not been the same. So, yeah, I would love to see that happen if there was a situation where that could work. But I don't personally see it being the Chiefs. I do think he's going to get traded. I mean, he has, like we talked about, this year, I believe, is a $27 million cap, and then next year that goes all the way up to $52 million, almost doubles next year. So it's definitely something that they would have to make work contractually, but I don't personally see it being the Chiefs, no.
Yeah, and I think Caden's right on the money. Because you look at the roster next year, the Chiefs have a lot of decisions to make. Trent McDuffie probably being priority one on that. Do you extend him? And how much is he going to be making? And the money you pay George Karlaftis, the money you still owe Chris Jones, and that offensive line too. Now I know Juwan Taylor's likely to come off the books next year. Travis Kelce, we'll see how much longer he goes. So money wise, it would take a lot, but I think if you bring Tyreek Hill back to Kansas City, he's what, 30 now, 31 probably. I see it as too risky of a move to make because Tyreek Hill is a guy who is already he missed preseason with an oblique. Last year he was constantly on the injury report with hamstring tightness, stuff like that. I'm not saying he's going to be like Sammy Watkins or Hollywood Brown, where he's hardly here. I don't think his skill set is going to particularly age well as he gets higher into his 30s. And at that cap hit, I feel like you're going to be sacrificing other areas of your roster just to bring in Tyreek Hill because we're worried about the next 6 weeks, right? I think it's a little bit too much of a stretch. I think it's too much to ask for. I think the better question is, does Tyreek Hill get traded? If the Dolphins refuse, does he just pull an Antonio Brown and quit? Just run out of the field and they end up suspending him or something like that. I don't see him finishing the year with Miami, but I don't think he comes to Kansas City.
When the saying goes that once a player's over 30, they're on the wrong side of 30. And an interesting stat that's worth talking about, today, Monday, marks exactly 1 year, 365 days since Tyreek Hill's last reception over 30 yards. So the guy that was kind of known for that big playability, with a deep threat downfield, kind of hasn't been that over the past year. Now, I think that a change of scenery could maybe change that aspect, but Kyle, you mentioned his injury history. You can't just ignore that because he is aging. And with that cap hit that Caden mentioned, I don't want to pay $52 million next year to trade for Tyreek Hill. And I see this maybe going two ways. The Chiefs could potentially go to Drew Rosenhaus, his agent, and try to get that number down and see if Miami might eat some of that cap space and eat some of that dead money to, acquire him. And maybe Drew Rosenhaus could convince Tyreek to, take a little bit of a pay cut to come to Kansas City. Or the Dolphins might just straight up release him depending on how the next 3 or 4 weeks go, because that relationship has clearly soured. And I'm kind of surprised that he didn't get traded before the draft, because the way that last season ended and the interview that he gave, I wouldn't want that guy on my team. But I think the question of if you would want him in Kansas City is completely different, because, yeah, the Chiefs have wide receiver injury issues, but I think that we would all, if you took the money out of it, sign up for Tyreek Hill in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I think you're definitely. And Kyle, I think you made a really great point as far as sacrificing the rest of the roster, man. I mean, there's just so many resources that you could fill this roster with, instead of paying Tyreek Hill that hefty number. I mean, when you look at $52 million a year, that's a very, very good defensive end. If you're paying him at, let's look at Karlaftis. That could be the perfect example. You pay him, and then maybe a high end, maybe a corner or something like that, or it's just not worth it. I don't think to sacrifice that big cap number. And then along with the GM that we have in Brett Veach, I think he does a really good job at taking advantage of those draft picks that we have, as we did with getting out of the Tyreek Hill trade. So I think if we were to trade those picks away, I think we'd have to give up some picks too as well to get him. I don't think it would just be. I don't think we have a player that Miami necessarily has in mind for Tyreek Hill. So
especially if you're going to ask Miami to eat money, it's going to cost a little bit more in draft compensation.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think we'd have to give up some picks. So I'd rather have those picks and along with that cap space as well over Tyreek, and me personally.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right, and I'm thinking about Trent McDuffie here personally, because I want 22 signed and being in Kansas City for the future, for the long haul. And Tyreek Hill, I think it's pretty clear that the Chiefs traded him because they got an incredible deal, a ton of draft assets that they used to build a championship roster that we've seen for three years now, right? That Brett Veach's his draft class of 2022 has yet to be topped. But number two, I think Tyreek Hill was partly shipped out because they didn't want to pay that guy $25 million plus, because frankly, he's a pain in the ass. And Andy Reid doesn't deal with crap like that. You either, as soon as Tyreek Miami, became a thing, he starts a podcast. He starts talking. He starts yapping about Mahomes, and then talking about how Tua is, he just caused a drama that I think Kansas City really didn't like. And, it's pretty amazing that the Chiefs were kind of able to keep him under wraps while he was in Kansas City. But it's clear they weren't going to be able to do that for much longer. So I get it, but I get the Tyreek Hill. Everybody wants him back. I get it. But I think it's an overreaction, because yes, Worthy's probably going to be out for several weeks, and obviously Rice is not going to be back for a little bit. I say give it a little bit more time before you start going out on the trade market and seeing which wide receiver the Chiefs can go trade for. I think the bigger position to worry about is running back. But that's just my 2 cents on the deal. Good luck to Tyreek in Miami. I think they're done already, but we'll see.
Well, Kyle, you mentioned the antics that the Chiefs were kind of able to keep under wraps. I think inflation must have hit the baby mama market, because that dude has got at least 10 of them now since leaving, along with like 11 or 12 kids. So how the Chiefs were able to kind of keep a lid on that is just unbelievable. But I view this Tyreek Hill situation as something that it would have to line up perfectly for the Chiefs. I'm not against it. I would actually welcome a reunion. I think that the number would have to be right. Miami would have to eat a lot of that cap space and the dead cap. I think that Drew Rosenhaus would have to try to convince Tyreek to take a bit of a pay cut. And I also think that the Chiefs shouldn't give up more than a fourth, maybe a third rounder, depending on how much they're willing to eat. But I don't know if that kind of thing would ever actually come to fruition. I mean, maybe the Dolphins are just desperate to get some tangible asset for him, but I don't know if that's super likely. But I want to talk more about this situation, and we'll do that right after this ad break. This video is sponsored by my wonderful friends over at DM Injury Law. Injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation, but time is critical. Rely on the experienced personal injury attorneys at DM Law, Kansas City and Missouri's top injury law firm. DM Law is a full-service personal injury practice supported by a large team of investigators, case managers, medical records specialists, and more. And best of all, you don't pay unless they win. DM Law operates on a contingency fee basis, so no fees unless they win your case. And they also provide free consultations. So if you've been injured, don't wait. You can contact DM Law today for a free consultation and learn how they can help you pursue the compensation you deserve. Let them handle the fight while you focus on healing. Hurt in a car wreck? Call Mike. Remember, Mike's got this. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisement. Thanks to DM Injury Law for sponsoring this video. The Hollywood Casino at Kansas Speedway is the place to be. With over 1,500 slot machines, 35 table games, 4 restaurants, and a new ESPN Bet Sportsbook, there are plenty of ways to find your fun. For more chances to win, follow them on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Huge thanks to the sponsors that have supported this channel all season long. Now, I think that the Tyreek Hill situation is also interesting because once the Chiefs traded him to Miami, I think a lot of Chiefs fans thought, okay, maybe after this contract, he signs with the Chiefs and finishes out his career in Kansas City. And I think that's interesting because let's just say that the Dolphins are so sick and tired of Tyreek Hill's antics, they just straight up release him. They say, you know what, to hell with it. We'll pay the money. We don't care. We just want him gone. Do you guys think that if that's the situation and he's on the open market, we could see him come back?
Man, I mean, he's gonna be so sought after on that open market if that was to happen. It's gonna be crazy. It'd be interesting to see what the number is that teams are willing to pay him. At this stage, obviously, Kyle mentioned a little bit. A player of his caliber and his play style at this age or at this point in his career, we don't know how he's going to age over the next few years. He may, have a serious injury that, obviously I don't want to wish anything bad against him, but we've seen those speedy guys tend to have lower body injuries that, hamstrings. Hamstrings can always, we never know which way it goes with hamstrings injuries. So yeah, I mean, he's going to be very sought after. If, like you said, if it was the right number, I would love more. I'd love to have him back. But it's going to be crazy if Tyreek Hill is released by the Dolphins. There's going to be a lot of teams out there that are willing to throw that bag at him. So we'll see.
If he's cut, that would be organizational malpractice by Miami because even no matter how bad the antics get or he just starts derailing your season, stuff like that. Sit him, get anything you can for him. But if that were to happen, yeah, I'd be first in line, and I'd offer to drive him back to Kansas City. I'm sure he can afford the plane ride back here, but I'm just but yeah, I doubt it happens, and I don't know. I'm still of the wait and see approach. We'll see how long Xavier Worthy is supposed to be out. And I think once Rashee Rice comes back, this offense is going to look totally different. Against the Chargers, they were still kind of that dink and dunk offense. Right when Xavier Worthy goes out, it feels like they had to kind of throw out their game plan. We'll see how they bounce back next week. But I doubt Tyreek Hill will be on the field.
Yeah, they kind of reverted to the mean of last year. And
Yeah.
I think that Tyreek Hill would come with his fair share of problems, both on and off the field. Again, on the field, health has been a concern, and some of the talents and skills that he showed, a couple of years ago is the reason why he got paid, but he has not been the same receiver that, just chuck it up, F it, Tyreek Hill's down there somewhere. It hasn't been like that, since a couple of years ago. But I'd be willing to take a flyer on him if he gets cut. I've got this weird feeling that he wants to come back to Kansas City. I do think that he regrets being traded. I think that if he could have signed up to be a part of this dynasty and still make, what, $23-24 million a season, he probably would have signed up for it. But I could see him finishing his career here, or at least coming back at some point, but not if Miami's going to demand a king's ransom, in exchange.
Yeah, I think it's clear that, Tyreek Hill and the Chiefs are a match made in heaven. I mean, it's evident with the success that he had, not only as an individual, but the team success in the time that he had here. I mean, like you said, even whenever he was traded to Miami, I think the thought in the back of everybody's mind was, when is he going to be back? When is there's no way Tyreek's not going to finish his career as a Chief. And we've had that thought, and now, with the health of the Chiefs deteriorating a little bit and things not going in Miami, everybody's, kind of bringing that idea back into fruition. So we'll see. But I think that everybody in Kansas City would be more than overjoyed to see Tyreek back in Kansas City.
Yeah, and I would too. I still do think it's unlikely, and I just checked. He's 31 years old, 6 months in, so he's halfway to 32. If I'm Tyreek Hill, I'm asking myself, I'm probably asking myself, about my legacy, right? You're almost 32. You're a speed guy. It's not likely to last much longer. Now, Tyreek Hill, I think, for my money, he's one of the greatest offensive threats in NFL history, right? His skill it's so ridiculous. He's had that longevity too. Now I feel like it will finally catch up with him eventually. But if you're Tyreek Hill, do you wonder about your legacy, your glory? If you find your way out of Miami, you hold this situation in your hands. If you can get your way out of Miami and you hit the open market, let's say, how would you not pick Kansas City? Or are you going for another ring, basically, is what I'm saying, and just add to your own resume, your own NFL legacy, right? We'll see what Tyreek Hill really thinks, because I'm curious what is pissing him off in Miami so much. Is it lack of team success? That could definitely be it. I don't think it's money. So if he wants to win, yeah, come back to Kansas City, build your legacy up, and get out of that laughing stock of a football team in Miami.
Yeah, I think that we're all in agreement that the Chiefs would be open to a reunion with Tyreek Hill. The price just has to be right, and they can't give up too much via trade. So we're all open to it, but we're not sure if it's going to happen right now via trade with the Dolphins. But I think that is all the time we have in this video. My final question for both of you is, where can the people find your stuff? And we'll start with Caden.
You can find me on Twitter at Real Caden, or you can find me on Sports Radio 810 WHB with Michael.
Listen to me on the program with Seren Petro, weekdays 2 to 6. Follow me on Twitter at Kyle Collier _810.
And guys, all that stuff will be linked in the description below. Hit that like button, subscribe for more Daily Chiefs content. Until next time, guys, thank you for watching this video. And as always, go Chiefs.